I was 14 years old the weekend everything changed. It was a warm weekend in June, and my mum had decided to leave town for a few days to visit some of her distant relatives. She said she deserved a break. That wasn't anything new. She often made quick trips to see what she called the other side. Sometimes she'd go visit her parents, who lived in a quiet little cottage in the hills of the English countryside. I liked those visits. They were peaceful, and I actually enjoyed being around that part of the family. But other times, when she felt extra patient, she'd travel all the way to Spain to see her loud, spoiled cousins who lived in some never-ending vacation home. That's where she was going this time. I never saw the point in going with her. I couldn't stand their constant shouting about how important they thought they were. But now, thinking back, I'd sit through a whole week of that nonsense just to avoid what happened that weekend. It was Friday morning when she woke me up. As usual, she'd managed to get me a day off from school. She told me she'd be back on Monday morning, just in time to help me fake a story about having a short stomach bug. That way school wouldn't ask too many questions. I helped her carry her bags to the car, gave her a kiss on the cheek, waved goodbye, and just like that, she drove off. I walked into the kitchen to make some breakfast. I couldn't help but remember how excited I'd been the first time Mum trusted me to stay home alone. But now it felt normal, almost boring. I spent that first day doing the usual stuff, listening to music, playing games, watching a movie. Pretty much everything a lazy teen would do with the house to themselves. Later, I fell asleep on the couch. I think I was out for about 3 hours before a knock on the door woke me up. I got up slowly like a zombie, my body aching from lying in such a weird position. At first, I thought about ignoring the knock. But maybe it was one of my friends dropping by, and I could use the company. Weekends went by faster when someone was around. Still half asleep, with that weird dry taste in my mouth I always get after napping, I made my way to the door. I grabbed the handle and pulled it open, trying not to look as tired as I felt. But the second I saw what was standing there, my eyes snapped wide open. A tall, thin old man stood in front of me. He was wearing a black suit and tie, with a worn-out bowler hat perched on top of his messy gray hair. His white shirt was stained with yellowish-brown patches, looked like old coffee, but his shoes were spotless. So shiny, in fact, I could see my face in them. Then he spoke, soft and strange, like a whisper, almost like a little kid playing grown-up. But I couldn't focus on what he was saying. My eyes were locked on his face. His skin was wrinkled and pale, nearly silver in color. The skin around his eyes was black, like someone had smeared charcoal all over. It made his stare feel deeper, darker. Empty. Not human. Looking into those eyes made me feel something I'd never felt before, like my fear had a heartbeat. I finally managed to say a word, "Hello." He smiled. That awful smile felt like something from a nightmare. It stretched wide, almost up to his ears. His teeth were sharp and black, packed tight in his mouth, and every now and then his dark tongue would slide across the top row with a wet sound. Tilting his head to one side, he leaned forward and said softly, "Hello there, child. I've come to offer you something important. Something you might need. I'm just a salesman. All I ask is a moment of your time in exchange for some peace of mind. Are you interested?" I froze. My whole body was stiff. I couldn't move or even breathe right. Finally, I stammered, I can't. I have to go. I'm sorry, it's just too much." Then I slammed the door. Just like that, the air felt lighter again. I could breathe. I dropped to the floor, shaking, trying to make sense of what just happened. But then, thud. A noise. I looked up, heart pounding. My eyes darted around the room. Slowly, I got up and walked toward the kitchen. That's when I heard it, a soft humming sound, like someone singing a happy tune. But the sound made my skin crawl. I turned the corner and froze. He was there, sitting at the kitchen table, humming and smiling that awful smile, just staring at me. I started backing away toward the front door. But when I turned around, a tall shadow stood blocking it. That can't be him, I told myself. But I was crying now. I couldn't stop it. I ran upstairs, past my room, past Mum's room, and locked myself in the bathroom. I could hear him outside the door. He was singing now. I panicked. I had no plan. Then it hit me, my only way out. I couldn't believe I was actually thinking about climbing out the second-floor window. But what choice did I have? The shadow behind the door was still moving, and I knew I had to go. I opened the bathroom window and looked outside. Then I froze. He was down there, standing at the edge of the garden, smiling, waving. And then he turned and slowly walked away. His song faded with each step, drifting off into the distance like he'd never been there at all. That night, I slept in the bathroom. I locked both the door and the window and made a bed out of towels. I just couldn't bring myself to step out of that room until the sun came up. It felt like the longest night of my life. When morning finally arrived, I knew I had to get out of the house. I headed to my friend's place. His name was Adam. He was a small, thin guy I had known since we were little kids. I thought maybe spending time with him would help me forget about everything that had happened. It's strange when something terrifying happens to you, but it feels unreal at the same time. You start to question your own memory, like you've got two minds battling each other. But deep inside, I knew what I experienced was real. And if I wasn't convinced after that first encounter with the salesman, what happened next would stay with me forever. Later that night, Adam's mom told me I couldn't stay over. They had to be up early for church the next day. I begged him to talk to her, but she was firm, said no and sent me back. I only lived a few streets away, so it wasn't a long walk, but it was dark and I didn't feel good about it. That awful face kept flashing in my mind. I hated that someone had scared me out of my own house. And that tune, the one he kept humming, it just wouldn't leave my head. I turned the corner and I heard it. That same tune. That same voice. He was near. I looked down the street, hoping it was just my brain playing tricks. I'm just imagining things, I told myself. But then I saw him, standing beneath a street lamp, smiling at me. He started walking. The humming turned into singing. Then he broke into a run, toward me, singing louder with every step. I had no choice. I turned and sprinted away as fast as I could. I could hear him gaining on me. How is he this fast? I thought, panicking. I raced back to Adam's house and banged hard on the door. Open up. Please open up. I screamed. His mom answered, eyes wide with fear. What happened to you? She asked. I stumbled inside and dropped to the floor, backing away from the door. I looked outside. He was gone. Was I losing it? Was it all in my head? No, there was something there. An old, beat-up bowler hat lay on the front lawn. That was all. No man, no song, just the hat. Adam's mom let me stay the night. She said I wasn't in the right shape to be on my own. I woke up the next morning feeling awful and looking even worse. But the sun was shining. I had to go home. I hadn't been back in more than a day. I needed to make sure everything was okay. I thanked Adam and said sorry to his mom before heading out. When I reached my front door, I paused, took a deep breath, and grabbed the handle. Then I heard it, bang. Then another. And another. I jumped back, heart racing. It's him again, I thought. How is he still here? Just as I was about to open the door, it swung open, and there she was, my mom. I'd never been so relieved to see her face. I ran into her arms and told her never to leave me alone again. We went inside and sat together all day. It had been years since we did that. Everything felt peaceful again. She showed me a new white dress she'd bought during her trip, and she talked all about her weekend with those noisy cousins. She seemed happy, but I couldn't say the same. Later that day, I told her everything, every detail of what had happened. She listened carefully, her eyes never leaving mine. She looked shocked. She kept apologizing, again and again. She said we'd go to the police the next day. But for now, she said it could wait. We had to get ready for dinner. I didn't understand why she said that, but I figured I was safe now, with her. An hour later, we sat down to eat. I told her everything about school, how I'd improved on the guitar, even some stuff about my love life. She didn't say much, just smiled and listened as I ate my meal. She stared at me and something didn't feel right. Her smile started to grow, slowly wider and wider. At the same time, her bright white dress began to fade into a dark black suit. Then she hissed, "See how simple it is to give someone a little of your time?" In that moment, he was standing right in front of me again. I yelled, "I knew it wasn't over. What do you want?" "Why me? Why my mom?" He leaned in and spoke softly, "You already know why I picked you, child. You never paid attention. I told you it might be something you'd need. I said it was important. But you didn't care. You didn't have the time, your precious time. So I had to use the one person you trust, the one you always listen to. And let's just say, I enjoy being someone else, even if it's only for a little while." "I'm sorry," I cried. "I'm really sorry. I'll listen now. I swear I will." He shook his head. "It's too late for that. Far too late. What a shame, child. It really could have saved your life." And that was it. Finished. Done. So, how am I writing this? Why am I telling you all of this now? Well, you gave me a bit of your time. So here's your little reward, your so-called peace of mind. Because you see, I like to be somebody else, even if only for a while. I worked the night shift at a small family-owned convenience store at the front of my neighborhood. We sell snacks, drinks, milk, bread, basic stuff people need when they don't feel like doing a full grocery run. There's been some talk about adding a gas pump out front, but that still hasn't happened. Because of that, the nights can get slow sometimes. Of course, we have our regular junkie who comes in to grab a soda or use the bathroom, but now and then I sit behind the counter for nearly 60 minutes before someone walks in. It does get a little boring, but I always have a good book or a YouTube video to keep my mind busy. I'm supposed to clean the store during slow hours, and I do, but that never takes too long. Each night, usually around 1 or 2 a.m., I finish the cleaning list and find myself online or buried in some novel. The night this happened was just like any other. It had been quiet. No one had come in for about an hour. I was rereading my favorite Stephen King novel when I heard a loud thud coming from the back inventory room. I jumped at the sound. I know, not exactly brave of me, but I didn't expect it. Plus, I was at a really intense part of my book. I looked over at the digital clock on the counter. It said 3:24 a.m. I didn't think much of the noise. I figured something had probably just fallen off a shelf. Still, I felt a chill run down my back. I glanced outside and saw a heavy layer of fog covering everything. That wasn't too weird. There's a lake right across the street, and sometimes the fog rolls in from there. But I couldn't remember a time when it was ever this thick. I started thinking something could be out there watching me, and I'd never even know. But it was more than just a thought. I felt it, deep in my gut. Some kind of instinct kicked in. The hairs on my neck stood up and goosebumps covered my arms. I was too scared to get up from behind the register. I knew I should check out the sound from the back room, but my body wouldn't move. I just sat there, eyes fixed on the glass front door, trying to see through the thick fog. I couldn't see a thing. But I was sure that if I turned away, even for a second, something hiding out there would make its move. The fear inside me kept growing, like it had a life of its own, clawing its way up from my stomach. Cold sweat dripped down my forehead into my eyes. It burned, but I didn't dare blink. I was too scared of what might happen if I did. When I saw them, 2 tiny lights cut through the fog. They blinded me for a second. My panic exploded and my heart felt like it would burst. I ducked halfway behind the counter just as I saw someone walking toward the door. My hand reached under the counter, trying to find the panic button for the police, when the door suddenly opened. A big man in a green jacket and dark pants stepped in, looking amused. He glanced at me, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Hey man, you okay? You look like you saw a ghost." I let out a breath and felt a weight lift off my chest. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, sorry. You just caught me off guard. I couldn't see you coming through all that fog." "Yeah, I get that. I could barely see the road out there. Honestly, it's creepy. Makes your mind go to strange places," he said, looking thoughtful. "Right? I was sure someone was out there." "I guess it was you," I replied with a nervous laugh. "Yeah, it was me. But it's nights like this that make you think," he said in a serious tone. His answer made me feel uneasy. He just stood there staring at the door to the back room. I still hadn't gone to check on the noise from earlier, and the way he looked at that door gave me a weird feeling. The silence started pressing down on me. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked, "Think about what?" He smiled, showing a lot of teeth, and said, "Life, death, and all the little moments in between. I try not to think too much about those first 2. I mean, who really knows? Anyone can," he said, his eyes suddenly sharp, "if they're willing to pay the right price." You might be right. There's always a price for knowing too much. I mean, I'm pretty sure Adam and Eve learned that the hard way, and maybe we're still paying for it even now. "Fair enough," the man said. "But how does someone go on living without knowing why they exist? I guess we just try our best with whatever's in front of us. And forget the truth, right?" the man replied. "What truth? No one's truth is absolute. Lots of people claim to have the answers, but most of it is just empty talk." "So, because people lie, that means the truth doesn't exist?" he asked. "That doesn't seem like the right way to think either. Why does there have to be only one truth? Why must it be the same for everyone? Can't something be true for one person but not for another? I think real truth has to be the same for all. If it's only true for you, then it's not truth, it's just a solution. And let me ask you, are you okay living with just solutions instead of real truth? That's kind of a pointless question. Of course I'd rather live with full knowledge. But who really knows that kind of truth? And if I told you I knew it, what would you say to me?" the man asked. "I'd say you're either crazy or lying. That's an honest answer. But I'm neither. I'm something else entirely. When someone sees the truth, they know it. So go ahead. See for yourself," he said. He stepped forward a bit, moving fully into the light. That's when I got a good look at him for the first time. He had a sharp, hard expression and a nose that looked like it had been broken at least once before. His face was lined with deep cracks and wrinkles, and a thick scar ran from under his nose, across his lips, and ended near his jaw. But it was his eyes that really shook me. They were pitch black like tar, and they stared right through me. Looking into them felt like staring into a bottomless hole. I couldn't look away. In the center of each pupil there was a faint glow, a small flicker of light. I watched it dance and shift, moving closer and then further back again. It felt like it was calling me in. The moment I saw that glimmer, I didn't want anything else but to follow it, no matter the cost. There was something strangely beautiful in the way it pulsed. Pulled me in. I stared into it and I knew there were secrets buried deep inside. I also knew that if I gave in and followed that light, I would never be able to return. But right then, I didn't care. I wanted to know. I wanted to see. The secrets of the universe were inside that swirling light floating in the dark. I felt like my soul was being pulled out of my body, torn from who I was, and dragged down that black tunnel toward the glowing light. The same loud crash I'd heard earlier from the back room snapped me out of it. I turned my eyes away from his and suddenly I was back. My brain felt scrambled and it took a moment for me to get myself together again. The thing standing in front of me looked just as surprised as I was. It clearly wasn't used to someone slipping free that easily. For a moment we just stared at each other in shock. Then the man grinned, showing jagged, sharp teeth. I quickly looked away in disgust and started feeling for the panic button beneath the counter. My fingers brushed it and I pressed down with everything I had. He didn't move. He just stood there like a statue. No breathing. No heartbeat. Those pitch black eyes didn't blink and I didn't dare look into them again. Then finally he glanced at his watch and said, "It's almost time." And just like that, he turned and calmly walked back out the door he'd come through. I watched as he disappeared into the fog. I couldn't see clearly, so I can't say exactly what I saw, but it looked like his body faded, like he was melting into the mist. One second he was there, the next he was gone. Even now, I still don't know what that thing really was. But I do know one thing: there are things that move in the darkness that we humans don't understand. Some hours of the night are better left alone. These days I stay home. I work where there's sunlight and safety. Once I tried to watch the security footage. All you can see is the front door opening and closing. Then about 7 minutes later, it opens and closes again. No person appears in the footage, but something definitely opened that door. You can see my mouth moving like I'm speaking to someone, but there's no sound, and you can't hear a single word. And that is the only proof I have. I also checked the backroom footage. All you see is a soda box suddenly bursting as it falls from the top shelf. Then a few minutes pass, and the whole metal shelf holding those boxes crashes down to the floor. I don't know what saved me that night. I just know I'm still here and I plan to stay that way. I wish I could explain it all clearly, but I'm just as lost as you probably are. People expect stories to end with everything tied up nicely with perfect answers. But life doesn't work that way, does it? We live and die on this planet. We fall in love, we argue, we make peace, we break apart, and most of the time we don't even know what the point is. I won't pretend I have the answers. All I really know is this: I'm still breathing, and some truths just aren't worth the cost. Back in 2002, I got a new teaching job in a different town. To save money, I moved into a small rental house. My roommate, Claire, was friendly and we got along well from the start. After settling in, I found my bedroom and began unpacking. That's when I came across an old framed photo. 3 men dressed like hospital workers were sitting together in the living room, the same one in our house. I figured they must have lived here before. I didn't feel right throwing it away, but I didn't want to keep it in my room either. So I hung it on the living room wall, like a small tribute to whatever friendship had once existed here. That first night, I woke up to the sound of someone stumbling around in my room. I flipped on the lights and saw Claire standing there, confused and moving slowly. She was sleepwalking. I gently called her name until she finally woke up. Claire looked startled, then apologized, saying she had never walked in her sleep before. She was still shaking a bit and told me she had a strange and vivid dream. She dreamt she was in a hospital and a woman, a patient, was holding her hand, guiding her down a hallway like she wanted Claire to see something. The next morning, I went out for a jog and noticed an old building just a few blocks from our house. It was huge with shattered windows and chained doors. There were no signs outside, but everything about it screamed hospital. I stood there staring like I was in a daze when I suddenly noticed something, or someone, watching me from a window on the 5th floor. As soon as our eyes met, it vanished. The whole place gave me chills, the silence, the empty streets, I ran straight back home. That night, Claire and I sat together, had some wine, and watched a movie. I told her about my crazy ex-boyfriend, and she laughed, saying he sounded like her during her wild phase. Then she mentioned that she had a mental breakdown a few years back and had been on medication for a while, but things were better now. That story made me uneasy. I barely knew this woman, and now I was learning something that serious. Later that night, I heard a crash outside my window. I pulled back the curtain and saw Claire stepping off the porch, knocking over a flower pot on her way out. I opened the window and shouted her name, but she didn't respond. She was sleepwalking again, her hand reaching forward like she was following someone invisible, heading straight toward the abandoned hospital. I quickly threw on some clothes and rushed after her, still calling her name. By the time I caught up, she had already gone inside. The chains on the doors had been removed. I stood there, frozen with fear, too scared to follow her. I still regret it. Eventually, I forced myself to step inside. Just past the entrance, I was greeted by an older homeless woman. I asked if she had seen anyone come in recently. She just smiled at me and turned away. Something about her gave me the creeps. I backed out of the building, overwhelmed by this dark feeling I couldn't shake. Then I looked up and saw Claire in a fifth-floor window. I called her name over and over, but she never seemed to hear me. I'll never forget the expression on her face, absolute fear. She kept looking over her shoulder into the building like something was chasing her. Now and then she'd glance down in my direction, but it was like she didn't even see me. I kept yelling her name as she slowly climbed out the window and jumped. She died right there in front of me. The police came and I told them everything, about her sleepwalking, about what I saw. But once they found out she had a mental health history, they just labeled it a suicide. That was it. End of story. A week later, I read her obituary in the paper. It confirmed what I already suspected. The abandoned building was a hospital. A psychiatric hospital. That night, I fell asleep and had a strange dream. I was walking down a hallway in a hospital. A woman in a hospital gown was holding my hand, guiding me forward. She kept looking back at me to make sure I was still there. Suddenly, a man's voice snapped me awake. I had been dreaming and sleepwalking. I had walked almost 5 blocks from my house and was now standing near the hospital. A driver had slammed his brakes just in time and shouted at me to wake up. If he hadn't stopped me, I don't know what might have happened. Now I was afraid to fall asleep. Too much had happened in too short a time. I tried to stay awake as long as I could, but eventually I passed out. The same hospital dream returned. But this time when I woke up, I wasn't in my bed. I was lying on an old rusty cot inside the hospital. Heart pounding, I stood up and wandered the dark halls, searching for stairs or an exit. I heard faint voices, some crying, some screaming, coming from the empty rooms. I turned a corner and froze. 3 people in patient gowns were standing in front of me. One of them was the woman from my dream. I panicked and backed away, telling myself they weren't real. If I ignored them, maybe they'd disappear. Still looking for a way out, I heard another scream behind a nearby door. A bright orange glow came from under it and through the small window in the middle. I peeked inside, and a man's burned face stared back at me. He begged me to open the door. I couldn't. I just couldn't touch it. When I turned around, the same 3 patients were standing behind me again. Then one by one they went to the window and jumped out. I ran to the window to look down, but I didn't see them. Instead, I saw 3 men, the same orderlies from the old photo, running away from the building in a panic. I screamed for help, but they didn't stop. That's when I smelled smoke. I turned and saw flames licking out from under the door, black smoke creeping down the hall toward me. I had no choice. I had to jump. I approached the window, ready to leap, when I felt a hand grab my arm. I turned and saw the homeless woman from before. She pulled me back from the ledge and led me out of the hospital. I ran all the way home. I stayed awake the rest of the night. I searched online for the hospital's history. Turns out, the place had been shut down nearly 24 years ago after a fire broke out. The staff ran for their lives and left all the patients locked inside. They died in the flames. The very next morning, I packed my things and moved back in with my parents. I haven't sleepwalked since. The incident happened on the night of September 17, 2009. I remember the date clearly because that was the day I joined the army. That night, I had fallen asleep on the couch in the living room of my family home, where I was living at the time. I was all set to show up the next day at the place where the recruitment was taking place. I don't know how long I had been sleeping when something, or someone, suddenly woke me up in the middle of the night. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw someone run quickly into the darkness. I clearly heard small footsteps and the playful laugh of a child. From the sound of the laughter, it seemed like a little kid, maybe around 3 to 5 years old. But I couldn't see anything since the whole house was dark due to a power outage. I believe that boy, or whatever it was, had been in the living room with me the whole time, either waiting for me to wake up or purposely waking me up before running away. I should also mention that there were no children living in the house at that time, and the front door was locked from the inside. So there was no chance that a random child could have entered the house at midnight and started running around in total darkness. Strangely, I didn't feel scared at all. That's the weirdest part about this. I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt curious. There wasn't even the slightest feeling of danger. In fact, I could have gone right back to sleep without a worry. But my curiosity got the better of me, so I grabbed my mobile phone and used its light to check every corner of the house. Still, I couldn't find any sign of a child. This has never happened again, not even once. But it has stayed in my mind all these years and I still think about it. I have so many questions and no answers. Maybe I'll never know what really happened that night. For 14 years, I kept this story to myself, never telling a single soul, until now. This happened 10 years ago when I was working as a nurse in a hospital for elderly people who couldn't take care of themselves. Most of them were bedridden, slowly passing away, some in a kind of coma. I was doing the night shift with a close female colleague. We enjoyed working together. Imagine, just the two of us healthy in a building filled with 120 patients. Of course, around half of them could still take care of themselves and were pretty independent. During our main checkup and care routine, which ran from 3 a.m. to 5:30 a.m., we had 2 more wards to cover. This meant changing diapers, giving medication, helping patients drink, and so on. When we entered the second ward, I suddenly heard a strange noise. It was loud and clear, but with some static, like a radio not fully tuned in. I couldn't make out what was being said. It was a woman's voice. I turned to my coworker and said, "Do you hear that?" She nodded and replied, "That's weird. Sounds like someone turned on a TV or a radio." I said, "Stephanie, how would a paralyzed patient turn on a TV or radio? And this doesn't sound like it's coming from a room. It sounds like someone standing right here talking." She gave me a look and said, "You're right. But let's keep going." We listened for a few more seconds, but the voice suddenly stopped. I thought to myself, maybe I'm just exhausted. We moved on to the next patient who needed a full cleanup. We had to change all the sheets, wash him, and put on a fresh set of pajamas because he and the bed were covered in liquid waste. It took us a long time. We kept running back and forth from the bed to the bathroom. Finally, Stephanie said she would help him put on a clean shirt, so I took the dirty linens out into the hallway where our supply cart was. Since we needed new sheets, blankets, skin creams, towels, and more, we left the room door open so we could go back and forth easily. As I turned my back to Stephanie, I could still hear her talking to the man and helping him move. A sheet slipped from my hands and landed on the floor as I walked. I bent down to pick it up, and at that moment I looked through the open door into the hallway. And I swear, I saw a small elderly person in a white nightgown float past. They weren't walking. They were gliding. Silent. Their feet didn't touch the ground. At first I thought, what the heck? Is that Stephanie? She had just been at Mr. X's bedside. Why would she be in the hallway? Keep in mind, nurses wear white uniforms, so it made sense at first. But then I realized, if Stephanie had actually left Mr. X's bed, I would have seen her walk out of the room. That part didn't hit me right away. I just stood there frozen. It all happened in just a few seconds. Then I heard Stephanie behind me. "Hey, what's going on? You planning to carry those dirty sheets around all night?" She laughed. I jumped and said, "Steph, but weren't you just out in the hallway?" She looked confused. "No, I was here with Mr. X, helping him get dressed and settled." "What? What's wrong? You look pale like a ghost. Are you feeling sick? Do you need to throw up?" I dropped everything I was holding onto the floor and ran out into the hall. I could still see the woman's figure before she slowly disappeared into the wall. Steph followed me, and when she saw me standing there with goosebumps all over and my body shaking from cold and fear, she looked alarmed. It was the middle of summer, but I swear, out in the hallway it felt like a freezer. Steph said, "Whoa, why is it suddenly freezing out here?" She hadn't seen the woman. And I don't know why, but I told her, "We need to go downstairs. Mrs. Z just passed away." She stared at me in disbelief. "What? How would you even know that?" "We just checked on her. She was sleeping." "Steph, I swear. She's gone." I saw her spirit float through the hallway. Still confused, she followed me downstairs. When we entered Mrs. Z's room, everything felt peaceful and warm inside. And yes, she had just passed away. Her body was still warm to the touch. So we called the medical team to come and confirm it. After that, at the end of our shift, we washed her and dressed her in a lovely gown. I didn't speak a word, but Steph kept talking, asking questions, trying to make sense of what had happened. She couldn't believe it. When I got home after work, I collapsed into my bed. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't even shaken, just surprised. I slept for a few hours and had a dream about Mrs. Z. In my dream, she walked up to me. She looked much younger than I had ever seen her, healthy, glowing, and surrounded by soft white light. She smiled and said, "Thank you, dear, for taking care of me all these years. I'm leaving now." It was only much later, when I started thinking about all of this again, that I realized what we heard at the beginning, that strange radio noise, it was probably an EVP. It was Mrs. Z's voice reaching out to us before she left.